One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. I do want to ask about your 1 year on Pat Summitt's staff at Tennessee. That was 1974, is that correct? 1975?
Yeah, 74, 75. We were both in graduate school getting our master's, and Pat's assistantship was to be the head coach. It shows you how much attention they were putting on Title IX.
Incredible.
It's pretty bad when you had three graduate students running the women's basketball program. Pat was the head coach. I was the assistant coach, and Sylvia Hatchell, the coach at Chapel Hill, was the JV. Right. And we were 1 year older than some of those young women that we were coaching. And they really didn't recruit at that time. And really Title IX had been adopted but not enforced. And we saw, as a result of that, all of us that graduated from Tennessee got college jobs. All the women did the next year because they made us teach wherever we went, so you had to have a master's degree, and we were a hot group. But in being on the staff with Pat, just phenomenal. Pat had played in the World University Games. She had not played in the Olympics by that time, but she had played in the World University Games. And just her experience, her competitive drive, probably, I'm a very competitive person, but Pat kind of took it to a new level. But she did it in a way that, people talk about her glare or her stare, sure, and the look she would give you. She would give you that look, but they never, number one, let me say this, they never misunderstood what that glare was for, because somebody wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. Pat was not one to use foul language. She was not one to curse at the girls or any of that. Her way of getting their attention was, number one, she garnered their respect right off the bat because of the type of player she had been and was, and having played on national teams. And then her pure knowledge of the game was pretty incredible for someone that had played but had never coached. That was kind of remarkable to me, because really her strategic knowledge of the game was far superior to mine. And I don't know if that had to do with the coaching she received along the way, probably some of it with having played nationally and internationally. But she had a real sense of, a strong sense of knowledge strategically of the game.
So what you're saying is the glare was in Pat Summitt's DNA. That wasn't something she developed over the years. She had to glare down from the get-go, it sounds like.
Oh, she had it from the get-go. And I will have to tell you a funny story, because she could motivate, I swear, a rock. It was interesting, and this was after I left Tennessee and was in Charlotte, and it was, 1996 is when it was, because Charlotte and UNC Charlotte were hosting the women's Final Four here. And we could not get the channel. We lived at Lake Norman, up from Charlotte a bit. And my husband said, let's meet at a sports bar. Judy, you come from work and I'll meet you there, and we'll watch the Tennessee-Virginia game to see who's going to make it to Charlotte for the Final Four. And I knew Tennessee and Virginia were big rivals. And I was at the sports bar, and I knew that I was awaiting a call from my chancellor. We were hiring a men's basketball coach, and I had interviewed someone earlier in the day, and he was going to interview them that night. And he says, Judy, I'll probably want to meet with you again after I interview this candidate. I said, okay. It was an internal candidate. So right before halftime, I get the phone call on my cell, and I'm like, I got to go. I can't. I said, this makes me sick. Tennessee was down by 12 points. And Ken looked at me and he says, well, I hate it, but I don't think you're going to have Tennessee and Charlotte for the Final Four. And I looked at him. I said, oh, they'll be here. And he said, Judy, they're down 12 points and they're not playing worth 2 cents. And I said, you've not been in a locker room with her at halftime. I said, I promise you one thing. You will see a totally different team second half than you saw first half. And the rest is history. They made it to Charlotte, and they won the national championship.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. And I'm sure you have so many more from your time with
Yeah.
Pat and being around the women's game. And obviously Pat's impact on our entire industry is pretty incredible and pretty special. And we could talk for a long time just about that. I want to transition to the last question, and really we should end there because there's nothing that can top that story. But are you a gifter of books? And if you are, what book do you gift most to people?
You know, I'm probably unlike a lot of people. I do read leadership books and all of that, not as much as I have earlier in my career, and not saying I shouldn't. I usually gift books. I want to know what type books people like. So what do they read? If it's leadership books, if it's women and it's leadership books, I usually do something along the line of Lean In.
Yep. Sheryl Sandberg, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And because oftentimes I will get requests from women on what I think are some good leadership books for women. If not, if somebody asked me, Judy, what do you enjoy reading? And I'm like, for professional purposes or for personal purposes. And if it's personal and I'm thanking somebody and I don't want it to just be a leadership book, I want to know what they like to read. I like to read James Patterson. I like to escape from sometimes the leadership books and sometimes from just professional reading. But if it's for a female and it's professional, I would say Lean In.
Awesome. I've covered everything I want to cover. Is there anything else you along any of these lines of conversation that you want to add to this?
One thing about meetings, I told you that I reported directly to the chancellor. His cabinet meetings are very interesting. And, sometimes in those meetings I'm thinking, oh, gosh, what am I doing sitting here through this? They'll talk about state appropriations, and I'm like, we don't get any. And athletics does it. We're spending an awful lot of time on this, and I'm like, God, I wish I could just excuse myself from this part. But it is really a privilege to be on that cabinet because you do really learn everything that is every important decision is discussed about the university in those meetings. So you have a grasp, and I am treated as an equal as a vice chancellor. My title is Director of Athletics, but I am treated equally as a Vice Chancellor on this campus, and input is important. So I think that is, I like his leadership style in that regard.
Do you believe that for aspiring administrators out there, it's even more important, given the climate and landscape of higher education, that they understand the entire picture of how athletics fits, maybe more so? Or maybe it's been like this for decades, but that's got to be a key component of leadership, right? The sooner you can grasp those dynamics, gives you an advantage.
Absolutely. And it does another thing in addition to that. I found out years ago, well, I've been on the cabinet ever since I've been athletic director, but I found out that the colleagues that you're seated with around that room have much greater respect for you and what you do, because they learn more about what a director of athletics does. Many of them don't really know. They think you're supervising, 20 some odd sports. But other than that, they begin to learn about your philosophies. And yes, academics is important. Yes, we want to be role models. And yes, they see it by your actions and your participation on those committees. And what it also does, if I need support or something from student affairs, I'm not going to start at the bottom anymore to get the answer that I need. I'm starting at the top and working down. And it saves time. I'm going to call the vice chancellor, and we're going to have a one-on-one conversation about how can we together make this happen, instead of going through the dean of students, going through this, going through that. And I just think it's been a great collaboration for me in the position and serving on that cabinet.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.